So first of all, let me thank you all for taking time out of what must be really busy schedules to join us today. The reason Cardenas is hosting these series of webinars is because over the past week, we've been taking an accelerated number of phone calls with questions from our customers in terms of how do you manage this current situation where we're closing down offices, we're sending workers home, and this is all happening really at a speed that we're having to react to. We can't pre-plan for it. Our policies and our procedures are really playing catch up. And to a certain degree, we're all learning on the job. So from my personal perspective, and I know that my fellow panelists will confirm this, that from speaking with my customers, I've learned a lot through this process, a lot of how we are reacting to this particular pandemic. We don't necessarily have all of the answers. So by creating an open forum, a Q&A session, what we're hoping is that we can impart some of the information that we know and we've learned, but also we can all learn from some of the questions that you have. And so we're hoping that you do raise your questions with us. Now, as you look at your screen, in the lower left-hand corner, you will see an icon that looks like a speech bubble. You'll see the blue arrow pointing to it in the graphic at the moment. You can raise any instant messages through the conversation panel by doing that. And actually, as I'm speaking, it would be wonderful if you wouldn't mind all posting in there and just let us know which companies you're representing so we know who's with us. Let's move on and introduce the panelists that we have. If we just move the slide forward, we can see the obligatory mugshots. Your chairman today is Peter Kinselley, and Peter heads up the Cardenas Consultancy Division. Peter's got a huge amount of experience in working with global organizations across a wide range of disciplines. And is supported by his right-hand woman, Claudia Calder, who again has got an equal amount of experience in the field, particularly in the pharmaceutical space. And so Claudia is going to be able to field many of your questions too. Andy Neal, my gosh, if there's anything that you need to know about lone working, about security, about travel, Andy Neal is your man, and he's here to support you on that basis. A good friend of ours, Harry Bliss, is the founder of Champion Health. His expertise is on stress and mental health, and he's particularly passionate about this subject, and so he's here to support you on that basis. From a US perspective, Bill Pace. Bill heads up our US operations and works across many different disciplines, and so he's able to bring into play the workers' comp, healthcare a discussion into the equation, and then me. My gosh, this is how I used to look 15 years ago. I really need to update that photo. I'm here to deal with any questions that you might have relating to ergonomics and that element of your employees working from home. So we've already had a number of questions that have been sent through to us, and as I say, please do make sure that you post any questions into that conversational field. Peter, as I'm going to hand over to you, I do have a question that came in a little earlier today. And one of those questions is very much relating to the European market with our regulatory basis. And right now, we do not know how long this period of home working is going to go on for. We're hoping it's not going to be for very long. But as it starts to draw back, if this gets beyond, say, 3 or 4 weeks, what is our legal responsibility in terms of our home workers after that period?
John, thank you, and welcome to everybody who's joined the meeting today. We have really very much a moving environment where governments are giving us advice on our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the challenge that we're facing at the moment is that the advice and guidance we're given actually is progressing much faster than organisations are able to legislate. So from our point of view, what we really have been trying to advise our clients is that we need to really act in a way that is both responsible and ethical, and also consider that we shouldn't react out of fear of being prosecuted. We've really got to make sure that everything that we do is proportional. We actually are accountable to our staff and our stakeholders. And really the best piece of advice that we could give you is for you to stay current and do what's ever reasonably practicable to make sure that we manage our staff. And this is something that we've taken from an article that was written by Paul Verico, who's an eminent lawyer, and it features in the SHP publication, which we'll share as part of our response to these meetings. But Andy Hawkes, we've got you on the call. Have you got a view on this?
Yeah, I mean, as well as the article that you mentioned, I was speaking with one of the top UK barristers, QCs, Gerard Fallin, who was advising government Cabinet Office on the very subject. And I think actually today we've seen a slightly sort of revised home working view from the HSE come out. So the acceptance that this is a temporary period, reasonably practicable advice, guidance, assessment is the order of the day. And, not to the law's the law, but let's look at some pragmatic considerations in view of the circumstances, Peter.
Yeah, Andy, thank you. Bill, we've got our view from this side of the Atlantic. How about sort of looking at it from the US perspective? Bill, are you there?
Sorry, Peter, I was trying to unmute the phone. What were you asking me?
Yeah, so at the moment, what sort of picture are we seeing from a government response point of view and advising businesses to work?
So on our panel, Claudia has done a wonderful job of pulling out what OSHA is putting together for COVID-19 and people working together. But I think the other aspect of all of this is, and what we'll talk about with Harry is the idea of mental health and mental well-being. And I not only think that we need to address it for the lone worker, which we'll talk about and have some Q&A on it today, but I also think that's the bright spot in this, that's what's going to come out of this is U.S. is going to be more inclined to survey our employees, assess them, and also provide help in those areas. So through all of this, I think that's going to be the bright spot for the U.S.
Yeah, Bill, I think that's really good, because I think, sort of focusing on the human side of things is such an important aspect, and it's great to actually see that that's the approach that's being taken, sort of on your side of the water, as it were. I'm going to come back to Harry in a minute or two, but Andy, can I just ask, Andy Neal, can I ask you a question? Lone working presents itself in a number of guises, and our personal safety and security is quite important at this point.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everybody. That's a very good question. If you like, some of the conflict is starting now with people working from home. There's almost, if you like, on a semi-war footing, in the sense there is rationing at the moment. We're starting to see elder people having shopping time allocated to them so that they can still get their basic provisions. There's a shortage of toilet roll and bread and different things like that we're seeing. So that may get worse, and also people working from home, with the difficulties working from home, balancing life and children and sort of well-being. It's a very different matrix, and I think one of the areas that should be guided out is actually good communication plans within businesses, so that the support is given to people.
Andy, thank you. Harry, When we look at, sort of this, we're asking people to work remotely. So what are the challenges we face as home workers?
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you for having me, first of all, and thank you for taking the time out. So in terms of remote workers, I think there's firstly the ergonomic problem, which obviously John Abbott is an absolute expert within the field. And already I've been doing 3 days of remote working where I've been socially isolating, and I am, lo and behold, struggling with a little bit of back pain. So I think that's the first thing, is to be able to make sure that we keep moving. And I know that the Cardinus Healthy Working app's hopefully going live tomorrow, from what I understand, and that will have stretching exercises within. So actual practical implications there. There's other areas such as within the health and wellbeing element, in terms of mental health, and that's a huge passion of mine at the moment. And when I was talking to organisations recently, and let's say even 2 weeks ago, I was saying that people are the most important aspects within your organisation, and some tech companies disagreed with me and they thought it was the technology, and lo and behold, they've now been struck down because of all of this. So I think that we really need to look at how we optimise employee wellbeing, not only just over the next 3 months whilst we're potentially socially isolating and working remotely, but thereafter as well. So there are lots of things we can do around optimising sleep, nutrition, physical activity within the workplace or at your home environment as well. And I'm sure John will be able to explain the Healthy Working app also in more detail.
Harry, I'm going to keep you there for a second. Just can I just remind everybody, if you've got any questions, we have the panel here to really try and be able to help you here. Harry, you just touched on one of my favourite subjects, which is sleep. And so why sleep so important, particularly at the moment?
Sleep's absolutely, it's the foundation of our health and well-being. It correlates with physical and mental health. If we sleep well, we make better food choices, we move more, we are less likely to be suffering with psychological disorders. We're also 500% less likely to suffer from a cardiac arrest if we sleep more than 6 hours per night versus someone that sleeps less than 6 hours per night. Then when you look at the absence data, if you sleep poorly every single night of the week, you're more than 1,000% likely to be absent versus someone that sleeps well. So the sleep's such an important area of our health and well-being. Now, in terms of sleep at the moment, it's definitely being impacted within workers from the data that we've collected, and that's probably because anxiety and stress levels have risen. So if we can look to tackle anxiety and stress levels, be able to communicate effectively with employees, sleep should improve within our workers whilst the COVID-19 pandemic is ongoing.
Harry, that's really great advice. Thank you ever so much. We've had a few additional questions come in around, sort of making our homes more comfortable. And one of the things that I'm very conscious of is that, we are spending, a lot more time. So, Claudia, from working at home, are there any top tips you could give to people about, using stuff around the home to actually make life more comfortable?
Yes, thank you, Peter. Hello, everybody. So I actually joined Cardinus only 10 weeks ago, so I've only been home working for 10 weeks. So I can really appreciate everybody's struggles as a temporary home worker. But yeah, have a look around your home environment and what you can use. So if you're used to using 2 monitors, try hooking your laptop up to your TV. That's one way to get a second monitor or even blow your screen up. If you need like a sit-stand desk, you can use textbooks. There was a lovely picture on Twitter a couple of days ago about a chap in the States who was using 60 rolls of toilet paper to raise his laptop up on. That really did make me chuckle. There's lots of things in your own home that you can use. Textbooks, yellow pages to raise things up. What I would recommend, and I'm sure all the other home workers in Cardinus would agree with me, have a routine. Get up at the same time to start your working day as you would normally work if you were in an office. And at the end of the day, turn your computer off and put it away so it's out of sight, out of mind.
Claudia, thank you. Harry, I'm going to come back to you again once more. So we've spoken about, sort of making sure that we keep, we sleep well, we keep mobile. How about keeping in communication?
Absolutely, and communication is a really important part of our mental health and well-being. We are, as human beings, social animals. Now, communication is going to take a hit. That's inevitable. Andy Hawkes touched upon the pragmatism element within last night's forum, and I thought that was really interesting, that we need to be pragmatic. We need to learn from this situation, and we need to see what works for us and for our organisations and for our teams. So I think that in terms of communication, we need it to be a two-way stream. We need employees to be contacting us and us to be in contact with employees. We also need data, and we need to be learning consistently around what's effective, what are the effective modes, and when to be contacting, so we're not micromanaging employees and contacting them too much. But we also need to make sure that we physically distance ourselves, but we don't socially distance ourselves from our teams.
Yeah, Harry, thank you. Andy Hawkes, you just put a really nice comment online. Could you just sort of explain some of the things you've done as our chief exec to actually encourage communication internally?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we had already started the concept of a coffee morning for remote workers a few months ago, and to encourage that that dialogue and that support for each other. We've now moved that to a different time, so our American colleagues can join us as well. So we're looking at what's the best timing for these things. We've just literally, during a call earlier on our last coffee afternoon, we came up with a concept of one of the staff said, well, why don't we buddy up with somebody that's new to home working, maybe with the anxiety that's going on at the moment, just having somebody that may be on their own, maybe having carer issues going on with kids and other sort of things, just to have somebody that's used to working in that isolation, being able to have a buddy there for them when they're not. So all those sort of ideas. And I literally just came off a call with somebody who told me that they've implemented beer and wine Friday calls. So you can play with that. But I think a lot of this is about support of each other in what is unprecedented times, and I think that's the message. How can we support each other?
Yeah, Andy, thank you ever so much. John, just coming back to you as well. We've had a number of requests of advice on vulnerable people. So, could you just pass some commentary on really what should we do to support those that we see need additional support?
So are we talking about from an ergonomics perspective, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, so the challenge that we have right now is we're sending people home en masse without really looking at individuals' needs. And so I think we need to be, as Andy and everybody else has said, very pragmatic about the way that we approach this. And understand that the way that we do things in the office simply cannot apply to the home, because we know that people are going to be working from their bed, from their couch, from their kitchen counter, and we just need to make sure that we're educating them and supporting them to work safely within those environments. Peter, really, to my mind, and the advice that I'm giving is that the more, the greater the disability, probably the least amount of support that we would need to provide. So people who are in wheelchairs or with severe difficulties are very likely to already have modified home environments that will support them living and working pretty well. Even so, at the earliest opportunities, we do need to be having conversations with these people and just making sure that they do have access to or know where to go in order to get additional support.
So in reality, John, what you're advising there as well, keeping regular contact with those that you see that are at risk. And also
there's one more group, Peter, if I may. So the greatest risk to our workforce, I think, are the people who have already reported an injury, or where in the office you have given them modified equipment. If you're suddenly taking a sit-stand workstation away from somebody, or a chair that's designed to support them, we're recognizing that they're already injured and then putting them into an environment where they no longer have that support. So that is especially where we need to have the communication. And I would suggest we have a conversation with these people at the earliest opportunities, help them to understand what the risks are, what they need to be doing, but then be realistic that the longer this goes on for, we may need to consider shipping those items to them. But even then, they may not have the space for that equipment. We really do need to make sure that dialogue is going and we're keeping the file notes to support that.
John, thank you. Just following on, we've had a question for Harry from Stephen Haynes. What advice would you give to employees to identify employees at risk of mental health issues?
Oh my God.
A fantastic question, Stephen. So I think it's so important to assess risk, and I know Cardiness are experts within ergonomic risk. Our specialism at Champion Health is assessing mental health risk within organisations and looking specifically at areas such as stress, anxiety and depression. That's an area that we do specialise in, so if you'd like to get in contact after this call, then I'm sure the Cardiness team will pass on my email. As to what you can do yourself, is just keep communicating with your team. I think that's very important, but also look at surveying this team as well to be able to assess the risk there. That may be where you require expertise from the clinical side of things. But I think the most important thing is, from what you can do tonight and tomorrow, is to maintain those communication channels. And if you're worried about someone, ask them, and ask them twice, as that's been very effective. That's been a very effective campaign in getting people to open up.
Harry, thank you. Neil, you've posted a question around you're a coach that wants to who's supporting home workers over the next few weeks, and how can you set that up? And in reality, what we're finding with those types of programs, it's really to try and do something like we're doing today. Actually use the technology we've got available and invite people to come and talk online or via telephone. And I would, encourage you to sort of look at this as a program. So if I can, I've got a couple more questions in there. Claudia, with your health and safety background, and again, bearing in mind what's been said, we've had a question around, do we need to use a fire extinguisher?
I would say no, and the reason for that is what we've always told people in a building, that if only use a fire extinguisher if you've been trained to do so. What I would recommend is a fire blanket, and I'll be honest with you, everybody who has a kitchen should have a fire blanket in their kitchen regardless what the situation is. But I wouldn't recommend asking for a fire extinguisher.
No, that's great. We've had Lorraine, you've just posted, I usually provide on-site mindfulness sessions. Can you just sort of give us a little bit of a quick insight to what that looks like?
She might be on mute, Peter.
Yeah. Lorraine?
Yeah, just trying to. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, hey, Lorraine.
Sorry, I'd accidentally muted myself, I think. Yeah, just picking up on the question that was asked earlier in terms of how to provide support. I'm lucky enough to go into a local business park once a week for a number of employees at different organisations, and obviously was concerned that support wouldn't be able to continue, but I've been able to deliver a session to a group via Zoom today, and was pleasantly surprised at how well it went. And a few of those people are now working from home, so I think it was, going back to Harry's point, it was really good to be able to have a bit of social contact with those people. I think they really welcomed it.
That's Lorraine, thank you for that insight. That's great.
Pleasure.
Andy, Neil,
hey, Peter.
Yeah, sorry, Bill.
Hey, Peter, do you mind if I piggyback on what Lorraine is saying as well? And I want to use, John, some of your concepts. And, with consulting with a number of our larger global Silicon Valley-based organizations, because they have employees that have been home working, but the aspect of sending out people who haven't done this before, is they're really focused on the idea of these are temporary workers, as John has pointed out, in the home working space. We don't see them being permanently deployed to the home, so they will be coming back. And and their message is one of breathe, hydrate, and move, right? So in the ergonomic world, as much as we're worried about posture and placement of equipment, your best ergonomic posture is your next one, right? So they're really pushing out the message of, as Lorraine says, breathe, like take time for deep breaths, but make sure that you're hydrating and that you're moving. And I think that is something that can't be lost in this message. The fact that they're temporary and the fact that we just need to move.
Yeah, Bill, that's really lovely. Thank you. John, we've had a message in from Tom Harrington that's been posted here. So with regards to DSE and working from home, we've put together some advice. Is there some guidance that might qualify as an appropriate period of time for these arrangements? So, is there do we need to look at the short term, medium term, long term?
Well, again, don't forget this is a temporary situation, so we can only really look at this on a week by week basis, because we have no idea when the end point is here. So really, my advice is that we have to be pragmatic. As I mentioned earlier, we know people are going to be working on couches and kitchen counters, and there is nothing wrong with that, providing people are comfortable. And the only real way we can ensure that is to make sure that people are moving, as Bill has said, that we have resources available to them so they know where to go for help. The last thing we want anybody to do, whether they have an accident or they develop discomfort through poor ergonomics use, we don't want them to say, I did not know where to go for help. We'll come on to it in a little while, but we have a range of free of charge resources that we've put together for you to use, which are all based around communication, around a number of subject matters. But Tom, right now we are very much in the unknown. Put your learning messages out there, encourage people to move, to stretch, but importantly, if they become uncomfortable, to pick up the phone and to report it to somebody, so that you can decide what your next steps are going to be on an individual by individual basis.
John, thank you. And Andy, we've had a question about, should we provide first aid kits at home for people, or is there an alternative view on this?
Peter, is that to me?
Yes, please.
First aid kits. Only above and beyond what you'd normally have as a first aid kit within the household. Obviously, I think one of the good things is obviously planning and educating the family. One of the ways to mitigate against contracting this type of virus is to clean. And apparently, any soaps will do, so you don't have to have the alcohol gels. And potentially within the family, set an alarm clock, for example, to wash your hands every 20 minutes or so. And go from there. I know Claudia had some good information on how long this virus actually stays alive on different type of surfaces, from plastics to cardboards, which is helpful. But obviously, the first aid wise is just increase hygiene within the home and keep people getting into a new practice of cleaning the hands, which everybody's been broadcasting and communicating.
Joanna, just to add to Andy's point, in terms of first aid provision, Claudia and I were speaking this morning, and Claudia raised a very good point, on one which I'm pushing out in lots of messages at the moment, and that is to encourage your home workers to make sure they're carrying their mobile phone with them at all times, because the reality is a lot of your home workers may be working upstairs in a back bedroom and could be taking frequent trips downstairs into a kitchen. If they hurt themselves, if they fall down the stairs, if they haven't got that phone to hand, it's going to be very tricky for them to summon help. So just simple things like that with your education to encourage people to keep their phone with them, be mindful of where they're walking in the same way that they would do if they were on a formal commercial premises.
John, that's a great point. Claudia, just coming back to the point that Andy Neal raised, do you just want to comment on that?
Yes, so there was a paper that came out of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in the States, where they did some experiments with this COVID-19 virus as well as the SARS virus from 2002. And what they showed that at room temperature, so that's 21 to 23 degrees Celsius, I'm sorry, I don't know what that's in Fahrenheit, and at 40% humidity, showed that the virus survives for 3 hours in air, 4 hours on copper, 24 hours on cardboard, and 2 to 3 days on plastic and stainless steel. I will, the BBC has actually done a very good summary document, and I'll post the link on the message board.
Okay, Claudia, thank you. We're coming close to our allotted time, so I'm going to go around our panel of experts. Before I actually do that, could I just encourage those of you that are attending at the moment just to post any more questions that you have, and what we will also do when we finish is we'll just give you we'll stay behind for a few moments just in case any of you have got any additional questions. So Claudia, any more thoughts that you've got that you would like to sort of provide to the people that are taking part?
So yeah, thanks, Peter. There's 2 points I'd like to raise. Those of you who are responsible for buildings or health and safety managers and senior leaders, I would urge you to actually contact your facilities, estates and security teams. The likelihood is they are still working, and what I've heard on the facility manager network of the UK, that they're actually feeling a different type of isolation. It's great that we're communicating with our home workers, but please consider your other colleagues that may still be at work. And my second point is, please do not listen to any coronavirus information off social media. Social media is great for communicating and for funny pictures and videos, but please do not get your information from social media. Please use websites such as the BBC, WHO and the CDC. They have all the great information and it's accurate.
Claudia, thank you. Andy Neil, any last thoughts?
No, I think everything that's picked up in this thread, Peter, is really about communication and actually communication with your workers at home and actually planning. We're already starting to see shortages of items at home. So planning within the family and planning within the working and well-being is key to getting through this, and actually just organising yourself so that things can function as normal as possible.
Andy, that really great. Thank you. Harry, any last insights for us to keep ourselves healthy?
Absolutely. So I think that the most important aspect of any business is our people, and we need to do what we can do to keep our people well. So investing in their musculoskeletal health, areas such as sleep, nutrition, hydration are vitally important during this time, but not least mental health as well. Let's make sure that we do physically distance ourselves appropriately, but let's make sure as organisations we don't socially distance ourselves.
That's great advice, Harry. Thank you. Bill, any comments or thoughts you've got?
Yeah, there's been several tests that have happened with a very old malaria drug and an antibiotic that seems to have very promising impacts on people who have the virus. So it's looking really good right now with these. And for those of you that don't know, that it does exist in a gin and tonic. But for those who don't like alcohol, it truly is in the tonic itself. So just know that maybe as a precautionary tale, you drink a little bit more tonic.
Bill, that is a wonderful way for me to actually pass you on to John Abbott. Just a big thank you to you all. John, would you just like to, close the meeting down for us?
So, Peter, you took Bill's comment about gin and tonics and linked that directly to me. I appreciate that. Guys, yeah, look, my point is that we've said it many times, we need to be pragmatic. The times we're in are truly unprecedented. 2 weeks ago, very few of us would have thought we'd be in a position where we are closing down entire buildings and sending people home. But what we have right now is a community where nobody knows what we're doing. And this is a partnership. Whilst we as practitioners are struggling to find out how we support our employees, we know that our employees are being incredibly forgiving because they're in the same situation with much of their lives too. So I think the key thing here is to make sure that we are communicating, we're educating, but more importantly, we are empowering our employees to be able to speak up when they have a problem, whether that's because they're uncomfortable, they're feeling isolated, or whether they've had an injury. Let's make sure that they know where to reach out to and make sure they feel comfortable in reaching out as well.
John, thank you. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, can we pop on to the next slide, please? Here at Cardiness, one of our passions is education, and we've created a number of resources, many of which are free of charge for you to use right now. We have an app, a stretching app called Healthy Working, and if you go to the Apple or the Android networks, you can download this at will. Now, I'll be honest with you, the app currently is out of date because the learning messages in there relate to a desk and a chair. We're having this updated right now, so that if your employees choose to download this app, it will give them guidance and advice on how to work safely on a couch or a kitchen counter. And there are lots of stretching exercises. So if they feel tense, if they feel fidgety, there's ways in which they can re-oxygenate that soft tissue. That's completely free of charge. We've developed a suite of around 10 emails that you can edit, adapt, change, and circulate as part of your communications program. Those emails relate to, as a new and temporary home worker, what is your fire evacuation? The isolation associated with home working. What about diet, sleep, ergonomics? And so we have a suite of email templates, and if anybody in this forum would like to see those emails or to use them, send us your details and we can respond by return with that information. We're also developing right now, many of you will know that we are incredibly well known for our e-learning programs. Our core product, Healthy Working, our office ergonomics program, whilst it's brilliant, isn't really geared up to this temporary home working situation. So we're developing a e-learning course right now that is very pragmatic, but essentially takes the different styles of working at home and helps an individual to stay comfortable, whether they're on a bed or curled up on a couch or whatever it may be. And then separately to all the freebie things that we offer, we have partnered up with some of our associated companies, such as Osmond Ergonomics. We know you guys you're not going to want to be spending money on solutions because this is temporary. But if you do need ergonomic solutions for people who are struggling, Guy has been working really hard to put together an incredibly low cost laptop kit, laptop riser, keyboard and mouse. It is so low key that in reality it is almost disposable. So again, reach out to us if you want any information on this, but we've got a suite of freebie information. Any of these resources are available for you. Just reach out and ask us for it.
John, thank you. I'm going to draw the meeting to a close now. So thank you all to all of you who participated today. I hope we've answered all your questions. If we've not done that, we will go back through the questions that we received in and make sure that we do answer you. We are going to stay here for the next 5 minutes, so if anybody's got any questions and would actually like to use that time to ask anything, we will be here to be able to answer those questions. I'd like to say a big thank you to those of you that participated in the panel, and please just make sure that you follow the government advice, and please all stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Hi, this is Pam Ison. Are you able to hear me?
Hey,
Yes,
Pam.
yeah, we can hear you. Hi.
Yeah, I have a couple comments and kind of food for thought. First off, regarding first aid kits. So the first aid kits aren't necessarily needed. What we're finding is our clients, because we sell them, have been calling us for first aid kits because remote workers have their children at home and their kids are getting hurt because they're running around all over the place. So we have had to push some first aid kits to remote workers with kids because they didn't have Band-Aids in their house. That's my first comment. My second comment is being sure that remote workers have regular cold and flu medications. So if they come up with regular influenza, they have those kind of medications already at home. And the second part to that, if they believe they are positive for COVID-19, they have found that Advil has adverse effects against COVID-19, against the virus, and the medical health journals are recommending acetaminophen for anyone who believes they're positive for COVID-19 or they are tested and they are taking those type of comfort medications. So let me pause because I have two more comments on to that. So does that make sense?
That's really lovely. I think, again, it's quite difficult in these times to be able to advised by the letter of the law, and I think the point you made about first aid kits is absolutely valid. And I appreciate the information you've just provided. So what were the other comments that you've got?
So the other two, yesterday in Silicon Valley, one of the power companies, Silicon Valley Power, went down for a few hours, and so remote workers in that part of Silicon Valley did not have power. So it's a good reminder for remote workers to, just have a plan in the event you lose power for, anywhere from like 1 to 6 hours. So things like having flashlights, backup batteries for your phone, backup batteries for your laptops. I have a backup battery specifically to plug into my laptop. So that's my comment on just being sure, because that is disaster, especially if we have remote workers who are still working in kind of storm areas where they could lose power.
I think that's great advice.
Okay. And then my last is, I know OSHA is going to be coming up with guidance. What we're working with our customers right now is we're building post-pandemic re-entry plans for remote workers. So remote workers who are coming back, we're designing online training for remote workers so they understand the level of expectation as we try to prevent aerosol disease transmission as they come back into the workplace.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a very valid commentary. Unfortunately, we just don't know what that timescale is going to be at the moment. So really appreciate that.
Yeah, agreed. And we don't either, but we're still going to go ahead and build it. So come April, it's already built. It's on the online platform. It's on the LMS, and then clients could have the option to do that or to push that type of training to their remote workers coming back.
Yeah. Peter, I believe that your plan is that we will be hosting some of these sessions later so that we can address the whole return to work principle there, because there's other factors, as you've been pointing out, in regards to Legionella testing,
water hygiene,
other factors too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, at the moment it's, I think it's good forward plan, but, at the moment it's dealing with the current anxieties. I've just had another commentary for anybody else that's remaining. Please, if you're going to talk to us, just unmute. And again, we're going to be here for a few moments. So, please, if you do have any questions, do ask. So let me have a look.
This is Kathy Espinosa. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Kathy.
Yeah, Kathy, hi. We didn't quite answer all your questions, did we?
No. Do you recommend that workers sign a telecommuting agreement as a risk management control?
Kathy, what would you do if they didn't sign it?
Well, if they get hurt at home, so a telecommuting agreement says that I would send out an ergonomics policy, best practices for setting up your office workstation, and it talks about an agreement to take your breaks, be sure you take a lunch, and just anything that's important as far as the law, so that they're aware of it, so my company knows that they've signed off on that.
But again, if they chose not to sign it, would you stop them working from home?
I would say yes.
Okay.
But I don't know what the options are. Like I say, we're all kind of learning this on the fly.
Yeah, I would see. I would say because of in business as normal times, I would absolutely say that yes, you have some contractual requirements of people who work from home either permanently or occasionally. But right now, we're not giving people a choice. We are, in many cases, mandating the fact that they work from home. So personally, rather than doing anything so formal, which looks like you're now just trying to cover your back in case they hurt themselves at home, that I would make this into more of an engaging educational process. Because if your colleagues decide, actually, I'm not happy signing that agreement, you're still potentially not giving them the opportunity to remain in the office. So it might, to my mind, give out the wrong message that you're working in a protectionist way rather than a supportive way of working with your colleagues.
I agree, but we work with all the school districts in the state of California, and everybody knows we're a very deep pocket.
Yes.
And that's what we worry about.
Yeah, I would with things like making sure they understand policies. I mean, Peter will support me with this. That quite often your policies and your procedures are pretty dry documents, and people will say, "Yeah, I read it," when in fact they haven't, because they're not particularly user friendly. So I would always advocate that you take your policies and put them into a format that is engaging, easy to understand, but where you can perhaps test people's competency with them. Ask them some questions relating to that policy. Do you get it? Do you understand it? Particularly if you have people where English might not be their first language, we don't want them to just say, yeah, I've read the policy, when in fact they may not have understood it. So I would always advocate, take your dry documents, your policy information, take out the salient points, make it more engaging, more memorable, and then test the competency afterwards. Peter, what do you think?
Yeah, my only additional commentary there is that I do hear a little bit of anxiety in the background with the question, and for me sometimes that's the point where if you are engaging a company lawyer, then it's good to get a view from them as well. Because then at least that puts you in, gives you peace of mind. And one of the reasons why I raised at the beginning the commentary that I have is that what we've been trying to do is assure people that they're doing the right thing at the moment. And what we're finding is that the pace that the outbreak's taking place means that actually governments are changing their advice almost on a daily basis. So we really have to try and do the right thing by our people, but also as organisations sometimes just take a moment to ask those questions, just to make sure that that if this outbreak does last for a longer period of time, that we are doing the right things by the business as well.
No, I agree. I just work in risk management and trying to find an effective control for the other side of the workforce, which is the employer.
Sorry, you first.
No, I'm just saying we're just trying to find a way to control some of the risk that will come up on the backside of this.
Yeah, so again, what I would say is that, sort of the challenge with, sort of my role and Claudia's role is that we want to be able to give expert advice. And again, we've got to look at the, sort of the legal aspect and also the precedence that's being set. So, for you, treading cautiously here will be the, sort of the terms I'd use. I would very much advocate. So again, from our point of view, we want to make sure that, we do, give due consideration to the advice we're giving. But again, what I would suggest is do the right thing first, but then, when you have time to make sure that you're getting that advice you need from somebody who's advising your business from a legal standpoint.
Perfect. All right. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the information.
Absolute pleasure. And, I hope you and your team are keeping well.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah,
Okay.
One area of risk that I think with the broader net of communications vis-a-vis the internet, a lot of employers need to take a fresh look at their security on their communications, making sure they're encrypted or their employees have access to encryption or VPN type access.
Yeah.
As one area that we've seen a lot of activity in.
Rob, I think that's a good shout, because even though we've tried not to touch on the business continuity or the sort of or the business resilience side of things, what we're seeing is that businesses are finding that because remote working is happening so quickly, that the infrastructure is not in place, or it's in place but doesn't have the capacity and the resilience hasn't been tested. So I do recognize that probably we need a different skill set on this call to be able to discuss that through. What we're also seeing is that where people are remote working and can't log on properly and can't do their job, that creates huge amounts of anxiety.
Right.
And in reality, that's the reason why I've adopted to take the approach we have, because in reality, what we want to try and do is address those key things for remote working, that we can perhaps help organizations control better whilst they get the stuff like the IT into order.
Makes perfect sense. Yeah, appreciate the approach.
Yeah. So, but no, I think it's a great comment, and really appreciate you sort of being on board today.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. So, has anybody else got any other questions or anything else they'd like to add? If it all stays silent, I'm going to give it 30 seconds, then I'll close down the call. All I'd really like to say is, for all of you that participated today, thank you so much. And, it's been really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.